Hey guys, Megan here. I wanted to share something with you today, kind of a bonus episode, but also kind of a brain dump of what's been rattling around in my head after producing, recording, and editing more Girls Next Door. You might have assumed, like I did at the beginning, that this was just going to be a fun little nostalgia project. Revisit a show we loved back when low-rise jeans were the default, flip phones were snapping shut dramatically, and Sunday nights belonged to the girls next door. And don't get me wrong, it is that. It's fun, it's ridiculous, it's peak Y2K chaos in the best way. But somewhere between rewatching episodes and editing my own commentary, I started noticing that what we were watching back then wasn't just reality TV. It was a system. One that shaped how we understood women, men, power, relationships, all of it. We didn't just watch that system, we absorbed it. So this episode isn't really about recapping anything. It's about pulling back a layer and looking at what was actually going on, and more importantly, how much of it is still going on now, just in a different form. Because if you've been listening, you've probably felt it too. That shift where it stops being, wow, this show was wild, and starts becoming, wait, this feels familiar. So today I want to talk about that. Not just what's changed since the early 2000s, but what hasn't.
No!
So, the girls next door. You've got 3 girlfriends, a mansion, themed parties, matching outfits, a trampoline, and a boyfriend who is somehow always in pajamas. It looks effortless, it looks glamorous, it looks like a choice. But underneath all of that, there's a very clear structure. Because back then, the game, especially for women, was about being chosen. And the gatekeepers? Institutions like Playboy and platforms like the E-Network. They decided what was hot, who was visible, and how femininity should look. And it looked very specific. Blonde, thin, glossy, coordinated. There was a uniform. Let's not pretend there wasn't a uniform. And if you zoomed out, it's the same aesthetic you saw with the Pussycat Dolls, with Vegas showgirls, with Playmates, with early reality TV stars. This is the same era where Paris Hilton was everywhere because of a leaked tape she didn't control.
You know, in the beginning they said that her and she was incapacitated and you couldn't see the whites of her eyes. And, you know, I have a full color version on trustfundgirls.com, trustfundgirls.com. You could see it was 2 people in love enjoying sex. Everybody has sex.
It was like being electronically and for people to think that I did it on purpose. Because after that, all of these leaked tapes were coming out, and it almost became like a blueprint to become famous. Like, I didn't need to do that. My grandmother always called me Grace Kelly, Marilyn Monroe, and I always wanted to live up to that for her. And I just felt when that happened, that took it all away from me.
And Holly, Bridget, and Kendra? Smart, strategic, very aware in completely different ways, weren't powerless. But they too were operating within a system, not building their own. You had agency, but it was still on someone else's terms. Now jump to 2026, and suddenly everyone has a platform. No mansion required. No group photo approval. No curfew, well, unless it's self-imposed because your algorithm punishes you for not posting at 9 a.m. Women are no longer waiting to be chosen in the same centralized way. They are choosing what they show, who they partner with, how they make money, which sounds empowering. And it is, but also, now you're your own casting director, producer, marketing team, and HR department. So congratulations, you escaped the mansion. Now, You are the mansion. And let's talk about sexuality. I bring you back to Girls Next Door, Season 1, Episode 12. The moment when Bridget went from an image-obsessed, polka-dot-donning, centerfold-chasing girly girl to the Dalai Lama.
I think I'm also afraid they're going to ask a lot of personal sexual questions. And it's not that I'm afraid to talk about that kind of stuff, but I think it's inappropriate because I feel like if Katie Holmes went on there, they wouldn't ask her how Tom is in bed.
She's about to go on the talk show The View, and she's nervous. Not about being on TV, but about what she's going to be asked. She's chatting with the makeup artist, and she casually comments, "If Katie Holmes went on the show, they wouldn't ask her how Tom Cruise is in bed." Boom, Bridget. That's not a throwaway line, that's a diagnosis. She's identifying a hierarchy. In 2005, not all women were treated the same, even when they were equally visible, equally famous, equally in relationships with powerful men. Some women were protected, others were exposed. Take someone like Katie Holmes at the time. She's dating Tom Cruise, one of the most famous men in the world. It was peak Tomcat era, him jumping on Oprah's couch and Scientology whispers everywhere. Their relationship is in magazines, interviews, headlines. But even then, even at that level of media frenzy, the framing is romantic, aspirational, serious. Katie Holmes could go on national television and be treated like a legitimate actress, a girlfriend, a future wife. No one's sitting her down on daytime television asking for sexual details. That would be seen as inappropriate, disrespectful, beneath her. Now put that next to Holly, Bridget, and Kendra, also dating one of the most famous men in the world, also highly visible, also part of a widely consumed media narrative. But their framing, sexual, transactional, public property. So instead of being asked about their careers, their ambitions, or even their relationship in an emotional sense, they're expected to answer questions about sex. Not because it's relevant, but because it's allowed. And that's the difference Bridget was pointing out. It's not that sexuality existed, it's that it was assigned value depending on the woman. If you were positioned as respectable, your relationship was romantic. If you were positioned as Playboy, your relationship was transactional and therefore open for dissection. Same country, same media, same year. Completely different rules. And those rules weren't just coming from men. They were reinforced by media, by interviewers, by daytime talk shows, by audiences. While Jennifer Aniston, even at the center of the Pitt-Jolie scandal, was still treated as America's sweetheart, tabloids were running invasive breakdowns of women like Pamela Anderson and Carmen Electra. Their bodies, their relationships, their sex lives, like it was public domain. There was this unspoken agreement. These girls, we can ask anything. Those girls, off limits. And here's where it gets deeper, because this didn't stay in 2005. It just changed platforms. Fast forward to now, look at how different women are treated online.
Taylor Swift gushing about her man like we've never heard before.
So is Kim's butt real? Well, an x-ray will show whether there's an implant in her
What are they doing? Either they're dating and they decided to come out just in the biggest possible way.
American Eagle faces backlash over a Sydney Sweeney ad accused of racism due to a gene.
I think she's had cheek implants placed, rhinoplasty, a fat transfer, Botox filler.
My butt is real. I feel bad,
It's sad to me that she's resigning herself to that fate, but I kind of think she already did a long time ago and was like, I'm not going to have a long career in Hollywood. Like, this is the path that she has chosen to go down, and it's one that...
Take someone like Taylor Swift. When she's in a relationship, whether it's Travis Kelce or anyone before that, The conversation is, who's the song about? Is she happy? What does this mean for her next album? Even when people speculate, it's framed through her work, her emotions, her narrative. There's a line people generally don't cross in mainstream conversation. Now, compare that to someone like Kim Kardashian. Her relationships, her body, her sexuality, they are constantly dissected. Not just discussed, dissected. People feel entitled to analyze what she's had done, how she presents herself, what her relationships mean, what's real versus fake. There's no boundary. The assumption is everything is fair game. Or take someone like Sydney Sweeney, a critically acclaimed actress producing her own projects, building a serious career. And yet a huge percentage of the conversation around her still centers on her body. Interviews, headlines, comment sections. Not because that's all she offers, but because the audience has decided that's what they're allowed to focus on. And then you have influencers, women who built their own platforms. On paper, they have full control. But in reality, the moment they lean into sexuality even slightly, they often get pushed into that same category Bridget was talking about, where people feel entitled to comment, speculate, judge, and question. So when we say some women are off limits, we mean women positioned as serious, talented, and respectable, whose brand is protected by institutions, legacy, or narrative framing. And when we say some women are open for commentary, we mean women whose visibility is tied, even partially, to beauty, sexuality, or self-presentation. Women who are seen as having chosen visibility, and therefore, in the public's mind, have forfeited privacy. And here's the uncomfortable conclusion. The more a woman is associated with sexuality, even on her own terms, the less privacy she's given. People feel more entitled to her, not less. If you really think about 2005, it was the golden age of public takedowns disguised as entertainment. The Janet Jackson Super Bowl halftime fallout, her career taking the hit while Justin Timberlake walked away largely untouched, or Jessica Simpson being publicly reduced to the chicken of the sea moment, intelligence turned into a punchline that overshadowed everything else. And how about Britney Spears' public breakdown captured in aggressive paparazzi shots and sold back to us at the grocery checkout? These women weren't just visible. They were being shaped or flattened into categories the audience could consume. And once you were placed into a category, party girl, serious actress, girlfriend, sex symbol, that category dictated how the public was allowed to treat you. Which brings us right back to Bridget.
If Katie Holmes went on there, they wouldn't ask her how Tom is in bed.
What she was recognizing in that moment wasn't just nerves about an interview. She was recognizing that she existed in a category where people felt entitled to cross lines, where questions that would be considered inappropriate, even offensive for one woman, were considered totally acceptable for her. So I ask you, what's really changed? We've changed the language, we've changed the platforms, we've even changed the aesthetics. But that underlying question, who is allowed to have boundaries and who isn't, that's still being subjectively determined in real time every day. Now for the men.
There was nothing pornographic at all in Playboy or Hugh Hefner on the map.
No, really dreadful. There is a difference between being confident and deluded, and you fall, unfortunately, into the latter.
Amazon founder Jeff Bezos is aiming to raise about $100 billion for a...
I am who I appeared to be, if anybody was paying attention.
When you look back at the early 2000s, what stands out isn't just that men had a role, it's that their role was structurally defined. It didn't need to be explained, it was just understood. Take Hugh Hefner. He wasn't just a boyfriend, he functioned as the center of the entire ecosystem. The house, the lifestyle, the visibility, the opportunities, all of it flowed through him. He wasn't participating in the structure, he was the structure. Like if capitalism put on silk pajamas and refused to leave the bedroom. So there was no real ambiguity about what he was supposed to be. He provided access, financially, socially, culturally, and that access carried weight. It gave him authority without him having to constantly prove it, because the system itself was doing that for him. And that dynamic didn't just live inside the mansion. It reflected something broader about that time, when men were still closely tied to access to money, to networks, to legitimacy. So being with a man like that wasn't just about the relationship. It was also about what that relationship connected you to. Whether anyone said it out loud or not, everyone understood the assignment. So his role didn't have to be questioned. It was assumed. In present day, that underlying structure is a lot less stable. Not gone, but definitely under renovation. Women don't need that same kind of access anymore to build visibility or financial independence. They can generate their own income, grow their own audience, create their own opportunities. No mansion required. No robe-wearing gatekeeper needed. And once you remove that function, you also remove the automatic clarity that came with it. So now, instead of stepping into a role that's already been defined, men are stepping into something that has to be figured out, not just by them, but within the relationship itself. Because if access is no longer the main value, then the question shifts. It's no longer what do you provide in the traditional sense, it becomes what do you add? And that's a much harder question to answer because provide is obvious, it's visible, it's measurable. Add is vibes, it's emotional intelligence, it's support, it's alignment, it's remembering her brand partnership schedule and not accidentally eating the sponsored snacks. You can see this shift in how relationships actually function now. Instead of one central figure with everything orbiting around him, you've got two fully formed individuals, two careers, two audiences, two identities, trying to build something shared without either one disappearing. You see it with couples like Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, or Zendaya and Tom Holland. There's no obvious center anymore. It sounds more balanced, but it also means there's a level of negotiation that didn't exist in the same way before. Because now it's things like, whose career takes priority? Whose location are we in? Whose schedule are we working around? None of that is assumed anymore. It's decided, and then redecided, and then discussed again the second someone gets a new opportunity. Some men have adapted to that shift, leaning into partnership, collaboration, emotional awareness, because those things actually work in a system where power is more evenly distributed. But others are still operating off the old script, where the role is supposed to be understood without being redefined, where just showing up, being present, and being tall should carry the same weight it used to. But it's like, no, that was a different economy.
The popularity of internet influencers is forcing beauty brands to change their marketing strategy.
Many women who rejected corporate structures and their failure to support them are actually starting their own
companies.
The event is part of the Innovate Her program put on by the U.S. Small Business Administration to help workers start their own businesses.
One lucky lady will get a $5,000 cash grant for her female-owned business in the U.S. Women launched nearly half of all the new businesses in the U.S.
Has pushed everything from perfume to vitamins, and now even your next-door neighbor could be cashing in on the big business of being an influencer.
So what you end up with is this transition period where expectations haven't fully settled, where roles aren't assigned, they're negotiated. And negotiation is harder. It's less romantic. It requires communication, awareness, adaptability. And here's one of the biggest differences: power. Back then, power was there, but it stayed in the background. It was implied, not examined. You weren't really supposed to look directly at it because looking too closely would break the illusion that everything was just fun and glamorous and happened naturally. But if you actually think about it, power was determining everything. Who got camera time, who got the better edit, who was framed as likable or difficult. It just wasn't talked about. It was baked into the structure, and everyone, cast, producers, audience, kind of agreed not to poke at it too hard. Because the second you start asking, wait, who benefits from this? The whole thing shifts from fantasy to framework. In present day, that's the first question. We don't just watch what's happening, we instinctively start pulling it apart while we're watching it. Who's benefiting from this storyline? Who's controlling the narrative? Who's getting the sympathetic edit? Who's getting paid and who's just getting exposure? We've been trained to look for it. Not because we're cynical, but because we've seen enough to know that what looks natural usually isn't. And that changes how we see reality itself. Because in 2005, reality TV still had a level of plausible innocence. You could watch something like The Girls Next Door and think, this is just what their life is like. Maybe slightly produced, sure, but still fundamentally real. Now, there's no such thing as unexamined reality. We understand that editing doesn't just condense footage, it creates personality. It decides who someone is to the audience. We know storylines are shaped, nudged, sometimes outright constructed. And authenticity isn't the absence of strategy. It's often a very effective form of it. What looked spontaneous back then was usually expected or encouraged or rewarded when it happened the right way. And now we apply that understanding to everything, not just TV, Instagram, TikTok, interviews, even relationships. When someone posts something vulnerable, we don't just absorb it, we evaluate it. Is this genuine? Is this timed? What does this do for their image? Everyone is aware, at least on some level, that they are being seen. And once you're aware you're being seen, you start making choices differently. And that's what really ties all of this together. Because despite everything that's changed, the platforms, the aesthetics, the level of awareness, one thing has stayed exactly the same. Attention is still the currency.
Oh, shit. Here we go again.
Oh no, oh no, oh no, 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 no. Wait a minute.
Brother,
2 hours later.
Oh my God!
In the 2000s, attention was distributed through institutions. If you were on TV, in a magazine, inside a brand like Playboy, you were visible. Now, attention flows through platforms, algorithms, feeds, audiences. But the reward system underneath that, it's almost identical. Visibility still creates opportunity. Desirability still drives engagement. And certain traits, youth, beauty, charisma, still get amplified faster than anything else. The difference is that now it's layered with relatability. You're not just supposed to be aspirational, you're supposed to feel accessible while being aspirational, which is a very specific balancing act. So the system didn't disappear, it just rebranded. It went from centralized to personalized, from something you watched to something you participate in. Back then, you could watch Holly, Bridget, and Kendra and pick who you related to. You could say, I'm more like her, and keep a little distance from the rest. Now, you're expected to be all of them. You're supposed to be polished but effortless, strategic but fun, attractive but not trying too hard, independent but still desirable. It's not one role anymore, it's all of them, rotating depending on the moment. So what's really changed? That's tough. But the big shift is this. In 2005, visibility was something you were given. Now it's something you manage. And that sounds like control, but it also means you're responsible for maintaining it. So instead of asking who's watching, the better question now is, how aware am I that I'm being watched? And how much is that shaping what I choose to show? If you enjoyed this bonus episode, or if I made you look at the girls next door, or honestly just pop culture in general a little differently, make sure you're following more Girls Next Door. Leave a rating or review. And send this episode to someone who was there in 2005, because I promise you, they'll remember exactly what this felt like. And let's talk briefly about the future of the More Girls Next Door podcast. Here's the truth, guys. It's a lot of work for a hobby. And though I may not be the best solo podcast host, I do love it and would happily continue with a season 2. If there's an audience for it. So I have to beg of you, if you've been listening, please let me know. You can leave a comment right here where you're listening now, or you can visit moregirlsnextdoor.com and submit a contact form. I love you guys, and if there is a next time, I sure hope to see you then.
The bricks.